Hari Puri Baba never sat with me privately as the pundit did. The tradition of knowledge is a 24-hour-a-day circus, and people flock to him all the time for advice, for cures, and for blessings. He gave me nothing to memorize, nor did he give me instructions or teachings in any way that I would expect great teachers would. But his teachings were continuous. Despite repeated advice from both Hari Puri and Hari Puri to dispense with note-taking, I secretly did take notes, made my charts, made my diagrams, made my tables, still trying to fit everything I was hearing into a coherent system. I failed. One day, while I was collecting herbs in the jungle with Kedar Puri, I inadvertently touched some stinging nettles and yelled out some expletive. He quickly pulled some leaves from the kranz plant growing right next to the stinging nettles and rubbed them on my skin. Within moments, the stinging and burning had vanished. Isn't it convenient, I noted, that nature places the problem and the cure right next to each other? They're always neighbors, said Kedar Puri. Everyone knows that. It dawned on me that their proximity to one meant that there was a relationship between them. Kedar Puri had read the writing of nature's text, made his commentary on it, and I had acquired a tidbit of knowledge. If I had looked where I was putting my hand, I would have seen a plant marked by thousands of barbed spears. I could have translated that or interpreted that as meaning, do not touch. I recognize that in order to read the book of the world, it's necessary to see how things are marked. That night, Hari Puri Baba appeared to me in a dream, the first time since he had left his body. As in many of my dreams about him, we were sitting on the banks of the Ganga in what I later understood to be Hardwar. He told me that he was in good spirits, and I asked him where he was. He said he was somewhere I would never think to look. Is this a game? I asked him. He told me that it was indeed a game, and I would require a looking glass in order to play. He handed me a mirror with an orange plastic frame like the one you can find in any Indian market, and asked me to look carefully at my face. When I looked into the mirror, my face seemed different, perhaps a little older. When I turned the mirror at a slight angle, I could see the back of my head as if there was another mirror behind me. When I turned around, I saw myself reflected from every angle. In fact, I was in a room full of mirrors, and there were now thousands of me. The sky had vanished, replaced by a ceiling mirror, and when I looked up, my multitudes looked down upon me. Hari Puri was no longer with me, and I was sitting atop an abyss in a world that consisted only of my own reflected image. What a dream, I said to myself, and woke up. Sigmund Freud would have blown a fuse. The dream was so illuminating that even though the sun hadn't yet risen, the world seemed radiant with light. As I walked to the fields and then to the well to take my bath, I could see the phosphorescence of hidden ores shining from beneath the earth's surface. And as I looked up to the sky and saw the same light pouring down from Venus as it neared the horizon where the earth meets the sky, I wondered if someone had slipped me a potion during my sleep, because I could see the soft, shimmering glows, the reds, the blues, the greens, emanating from the stems of plants, spilling their secrets and connecting them with the firmament. Plants, minerals, and stars resemble each other, I thought to myself. I sat for my meditation and worship as I closed my eyes and repeated out loud the 51 syllables, the totality of my sounds, and moved in my vocal arc. I found each syllable reflected in the night sky as a star. I became overwhelmed at the resemblances between the syllables' sacred geography in my mouth and that of the stars in the sky. They seemed to occupy the same space, separated only by a mirror. But the resemblances didn't stop there. My own face was like the sky, my two eyes the sun and the moon. My body was like the earth, my flesh its soil covering my bones like its rocks and boulders, my veins the great rivers, and my organs the bowels of the earth, which hides the ores of precious metals. I saw that my ears reflected space through which sound travels. My breath was the wind, the air that allows the world to breathe, that I could feel on my skin, touch with my hands. My eyes reflected fire, my taste water, my nose the earth. There was something that made things resemble each other. I had spent my life looking for differences, trying to assign an order to all the separate identities based on a scientific grid that contains all of our knowledge in the modern West. Now, I started to see the world and myself in a new way, a way that linked everything together. The arrangement of nature may appear chaotic, but it's not accidental. When I saw that nature placed two things next to each other, I realized this to be an interior connection between them and that they share a similarity. And in this bond, properties, movements, and influences are exchanged. Syllables and sounds are linked together as they touch and change each other. Everything in the world is adjacent to something else and is so linked into a great chain of the things of the world. But I also saw how resemblance was not determined by space, how things could resemble and thus influence each other without touching. Things could clone, reflect, or imitate themselves from afar. I remember how Hari Puri Baba had described how one could reach any point in the universe in less than a second. What was the distance into the mirror that lay between my face and its reflection? What connection made my reflection smile when I smiled? I saw how distant things connected by reflecting each other. dogs barking during the full moon, Mercury transmitting its passions to the man born under the sign of Gemini. Distance between places doesn't exist in this connection, for things reflect each other. And things that connect from a distance are not equal. The stars overwhelm the affairs of man, and the moon the tides. Then I saw that the chain of the world itself reflected across space. I saw my face in relation to my body as the face of heaven is to space. The relationship among heavenly bodies was reflected in the relationship between me and my world, between people, as well as between and among all things of the world. I felt the rhythmic beat of my pulse reflecting the movement of the moon, the planets, and the stars in the sky. And the blood pumping through my veins reflected the great rivers nourishing the earth as my blood did my body. I saw my intellect as a microscopic reflection of the cosmic mind, and my innermost being as a small flicker of the world spirit. I repeated the 51 names of the Mother Goddess, producing a necklace of 51 syllables that appeared around her swan-like neck, that formed my inner firmament, that in turn reflected the celestial vault with all its heavenly bodies. Then I saw a connection in things that was independent of space and mirrors. A power of the same attracting and pulling all things into itself. Rajas, the active, excited things into movement and changed them. Altering their personalities. It pulled water from the sky to earth, and pulled water from the earth into the sky. It pulled the roots of plants into the soil towards the water that it pulled from the sky. It pulled sacrifices into the fire, and the smoke of the burnt offerings to the heavens, where they could be enjoyed by the gods. It had the power of making things identical to each other. It had pulled me to India and then to yogis and to Hari Puri Baba. It pulled me into a new lifestyle and now a new way of thinking. Left unchecked, the active, like a great fire, would consume everything in the world and make it into a homogeneous mass, like the pure ashes of a dhuni. But this doesn't happen because its opposite, the passive, is always present in the form of inertia, identity, and separation, therefore resisting the active. The language that I was being taught established a network from one end of the universe to the other. I learned to recognize the Brahmi plant by the resemblance of the twin hemispheres of its leaf to the twin hemispheres of our brain. That it indicates its influence over brain functions, and that the plant's effects are enhanced by combining it with the meat of the almond or walnut, both of which resemble the soft human brain protected by the hard human skull, and that the shells of these nuts treat skull injury. How else could I recognize ginseng if not for the shape of the root resembling the human body, indicating its tonic properties? I could now know that the Brahmi plant was cooling, like the moon, for its taste was bitter. All these plants spoke a silent language to those who knew it, revealing the secrets of their stems, leaves, and roots. Nature is filled with marks and flags that may capture our perception and point us towards a hidden connection. Am I sure I am me, I asked myself, feeling very different now that I was seeing the universe with new eyes. I didn't dare look at myself in a mirror, but I did examine my hands and feet to make sure they were still mine, because I felt like someone else. That's from page 174 in Autobiography of a Sadhu.